I used to have about £2,000 more by the end of the month before I started working in the NHS. However, I'm more satisfied and I'm actually happier here. And let me tell you why. So before you call me crazy, just hear me out. I'm going to talk about the pay and is it really that bad? What makes the NHS worth it for me? And should you consider the UK given the current circumstances? I'm going to tell you what everyone is not telling you on social media. By the end of this video, I think you'll have a clearer idea of why I chose a less paying job and why you should be considering it as well. So a little bit about me. Hi, my name is Sultan. I am an international medical graduate. I came to work in the UK with the NHS for the past 4 years. I also worked about 2 years abroad. I'm from Bahrain, which is a small island in the Middle East. The work cultures in the Middle East are very, very similar to those in the South Asian countries. So is the pay really that bad? So I used to get about the same pay back home as I did here. The only difference is that we're not taxed on anything in Bahrain, and I don't pay rent because everyone lives with their family. Everything is much, much, much more affordable. So at the end of the month, I used to keep about £2,000 from my pay, whereas in England, I barely keep £100 by the end of the month. I basically spend all of it on rent, on groceries, council tax, all the bills. So the pay overall is not too bad in my opinion. Honestly, the foundation year 1 and foundation year 2 is quite low pay, but once you get to ST1, it's not too bad unless you're living in London. Now, the problem with London, I've noticed, is that living there is very, very expensive. The rent is 100 to 200% more expensive than anywhere else in England. And most people who work in London, I'm not talking about doctors, I'm talking about everyone else who works in London, either they work in the private sector or they're corporate. So they get paid adequately, they get paid appropriately for how expensive London is. However, doctors in the UK, we are all on a national pay scale. We all get paid exactly the same. Whereas the doctors in London get a little bit of a pay raise for London expenses, but that is nowhere close to cover the difference in expenses. I remember paying about £700 for my rent, where my friends used to pay 1,600 in London. We both used to get paid quite similar amounts. So this is the juicy bit of the video. So why is the NHS worth it for me? Why do I decide to get paid less? So these are things nobody really talks about it in social media. All you see in social media are people protesting. So I'm going to tell you now why I really, really think working in the NHS is worth it for all of you international medical graduates. So from my experience, I've noticed that the work-life balance is much, much, much better in the UK. So in the UK, we usually work about 40 to 45 hours per week, whereas my previous job in Bahrain, I used to do about 60 to maybe 72 hours per week sometimes. So bear in mind that work hours are not defined just by the hours you give at work. So if you do an 8-hour shift and then you come home completely shattered and just spending the next 4 hours on your sofa watching Netflix to decompress, so these are still considered hours that you could have used to enjoy your time if you haven't had a really tough shift. Whereas in the UK, for junior doctors, it's generally 12 hours. 12 hours is the maximum you'll do. So the work-life balance is generally much, much, much better. I personally felt that your rights as a doctor a lot more respected in the UK. If you stand by your rights, people will support you. So another thing is the annual leaves. You get 27 annual leaves, and if you do cover a bank holiday, if you cover one of those or you work during one of those, they give you an extra 1-day credit, an in lieu credit. So basically you can just take another day as an annual leave. Many of you know that abroad, if you work during Christmas or New Year's, that means nothing. You just worked an extra day. You're not going to get an extra pay. You're not even going to get an extra day off. So I really, really appreciate how they respect your time. And if you work on a bank holiday, you can request for an extra annual leave day to basically make up for that day. The NHS also has a really good sick leave policy. So there's this self-certified sick leave. where you can just basically call work, call in sick for up to 5 days, I think 5 or 7 days, without even bringing an official sick note. You can just call in and say, well, you should be honest as well, but you just call in and say, well, I'm not feeling well, I'm coming down with this or that, and I need some time off. And you got it. You don't even need to prove that you were unwell, unless you're taking a much, much longer sick leave. Whereas that is not the case everywhere else. I remember all of my friends working abroad, all the international American graduates who work abroad right now, you need to bring so much evidence to prove that you were actually unwell. And I found that a little bit challenging, because you tend to go to work even if you're sick, because you just simply cannot prove that you are actually sick. And I found that really, really, really challenging. So the next point is that there is good career progression in the UK. So you can see where you're heading. You're at foundation year 1, you know that you're going to FY2, and then if you get into training, you have a clear path into where you're going to eventually go. And there's a lot of flexibility, which means you can change your mind whenever, you can change your specialty whenever. And I don't think people understand I don't think people in the UK, I don't think they understand that many countries abroad, you can only choose the specialty that you are currently working in. For example, when I used to work back home, I used to do pediatric medicine. I'm not even allowed to apply for training that is beyond pediatric medicine. So that is very restricting, because what if 3 years down the line, I decide pediatrics is not for me? Whereas in the UK, you can change your mind however many times you want. You can choose the specialty you like, you can change your mind about that specialty and go do another specialty, and so on. So that gives a lot of flexibility. I really, really love that. It's so freeing to know that you can do whatever you want on your own terms. The last point is one of the most important points, and it is about basically scarcity create demand. So in the UK, there aren't enough doctors. There are more jobs than doctors, which means that they need you more than you need them. And keeping that in mind, that changes the whole game. So then you can genuinely say, well, if I don't like this place, I can just go somewhere else. And you can quite easily find another job elsewhere. Where for all of us back home, there are thousands and like hundreds and thousands of doctors for each job. So there's just way too many doctors and way too little jobs, which means if you underperform, they'll just get rid of you and put someone else. And that makes you very, very insecure about your job. And these insecurities creates a lot of stress, a lot of psychological stress, while you're just simply trying to get through the day. If you prioritize any or all of the things I've mentioned in this video, I genuinely think the UK would be a really good fit for you. If you like this video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, because I'm going to continue talking about all of the challenges us IMGs face in the UK and my own personal experience. Feel free to leave a comment about what you want me to talk about next, and I guarantee you I will surely speak about it as soon as possible. Feel free to stay in touch, and thank you for watching.